You were quietly humming by yourself, slithering around the kitchen as you hurried to finish up baking. Your clothing was dusted with flour, bare feet thumping on the wooden flooring as you danced to the imaginary song. The window was open, letting in a cool breeze that wafted the homely smell of fresh bread out on the streets. Your mother called out from the back. "Listener, it's time to open!" You replied to your mother with a simple, "All right," before heading to the door. You twist the lock, which opened with a loud click, before you hold the heavy wooden door towards yourself, propping it open to invite customers in. It wasn't long before the small store was bustling with people. Many older women, mother of course, and young children running errands filled the room, buying their usual freshly baked bread. The morning were always busy. But as the day wore on, the customer began to thin. At lunchtime, you were behind the counter, staring aimlessly at the window. Your mother and father were out running their errands, delivering their baked goods and visiting the markets. So it came as a surprise when a baffled-looking boy hesitantly stepped into the store. His hair wasn't blazing red, unnaturally spiked up. His clothing was ragged with a few tears but looked like nothing you had ever seen. The boy sheepishly approached. "Welcome, what can I get you?" You offered a smile, bowing your head in greeting. I just need some bread." You nodded. Sure. Please excuse me for a second." You hurried to the back, prepping the oven for a new batch of bread. You got sight of his hair, drawing your attention back to your unusual customer. You peered at him from the doorway. He simply looked around, wandering around the store as you observed the various space of furniture. You caught the glint of steel from the sun streaming out of the window. The stranger was carrying 2 long daggers. The red head suddenly shot around, gaze meeting yours. You froze for a moment, simply staring at each other. You took a few steps forwards, bare feet curled against the wooden flooring. Sorry, but you're not from around here, right?" You asked, voice quiet. It's that obvious, isn't it?" The redhead laughed. Where'd you come from? I've never seen anyone dressed like you." He seemed to light up, walking closer. "Well, me and my buddy are travelers. We're on an adventure," he proudly states. You nearly launched yourself over the counter. "Really? Oh, please, can you tell me about your journey?" The redhead, who you finally learned was named Kirishima, seemed surprised at your request. But soon enough, he found himself recollecting his journey and adventure, with you being totally enthralled, hanging on each and every word. Kirishima was aware of the strange and sharp glance he got when walking through town, and he certainly received some when customers came in and saw him sitting on the floor chatting with you. But seeing you smiling so widely, eyes glittering with excitement, caused him to disregard all his concern. It was rare for him and Bakugo not to be chased out of town, let alone meet someone who wasn't even cautious of him. You spoke late into the afternoon, both silently ignoring the darkening sky outside. You knew your parent had come home hours ago, but they had yet to disturb you. However, it was clear Kirishima's partner didn't have the same ideas. "Oi!" You two jumped to your feet, startled by the sudden loud noise. Standing in the doorway was a tall blonde with spiky hair. He was glowering as he stomped toward Kirishima. "Why are you still here, shitty hair? I thought you could at least do something as simple as get some bread, for fuck's sake." Kirishima put his hands on in defense, leading away from the burrowing blonde. Sorry, Bakugo, I got, His face flicked to you, smiling at you, suppressed a laugh. "I don't fucking care, let's fucking go." He shot a deadly glare at you before storming back out of the door. "And I thought you were exaggerating. It really would give a troll a run for its money." Laughter filled the air, and the tension from the previous interaction melted away. Kirishima picked up the bread he disregarded hours ago, signing as he drove toward the door. I should get going. I see you again, right? He quirked an eyebrow, looking as if he was holding his breath. You smiled. Of course, I'll always be there. Kirishima returned the smile, his pointed sharp teeth on full display. Alright, I see you later then. He gave a quick wave before striding out of the door after his companion. Yeah, see you soon, Kirishima. You always looked forward to seeing the blazing red hair of Kirishima. You hold your breath every day, gaze trained on the window in hope of seeing him wander down the street. Every few days, he'd come into town and visit you, happily sitting on the floor behind the counter as he watched you serve the few customers who dawdled into the afternoon. But once they were gone, the two of you would converse late into the day, laughing and telling stories to one another. You tugged on Kirishima's hands, pulling it toward yourself as your finger danced across his skin, trailing his scars. I got that one from blocking a sword with my bare hands, he announced. You playfully rolled your eyes, trailing another scars. What about these ones? Looks like a nasty bite. You peered closer at his hands. Kirishima could see the flicker of worry in your eyes. Oh, I bit my own hand when I was a kid. He chuckled. She shoved his hand back into his laps, an exaggerated sigh escaping you. Ah, and I thought your scars were from epic adventures? You whined. Your gaze dropped to your finger, which are intertwined in his lap. I have a scar? It doesn't look cool, but it also didn't come from anything heroic either. You mused. Kirishima leaned forwards, trying to get a closer look at your hand. You stuck your hand left out, gesturing to the thumb. There was a small thin scar that traveled across it. I cut myself while chopping some vegetable. It didn't hurt, but I bled a lot. My parents freaked out. You let out a laugh, leaning back on your hands. You guys sat in silence for a moment. You always want to hear about my adventures. Kirishima quickly waved his hands. Not that I'm complaining or anything, but I wanted to know why. He cocked his head to the side, expression inquisitive. You sighed, pouting, as you got to your feet. I never left the village. Women are really a lot too, you know. We're to stay here and take care of the children and household chores. My parents are a little more open-minded, but it's not safe out there. You sent to the boy a smile, leaning on the counter. But hearing all your story, it's amazing. All the beautiful places and exciting moments you had. I could only dream of being able to live a fragment of your journey. You spun on your heels, maiden dress flaring out as you dramatically flung your arm out. The two of you glanced at each other before bursting and laughing. Kirishima would never fail to love your voice, your laugh. It was melodic. The window behind you cast bright rays of sun over your back, hailing you with an angelic glow. Kirishima decided then that you deserved the award, and he was damned if he didn't give it to you. He jumped to his feet, Katao's hand taking yours into his own, a spark of excitement racing through his crimson eyes. Come on, you have to come with me. You quirked a brow. What? Where's to? You asked. He turned toward the door, still clasping one of your hands in his own. Just trust me. He began heading to the door, you trailing after. Wait, but what about the shop? You looked back toward the counter, a worried expression streaking across your face. Go on, hon. I'll run the store for a little bit. Your mother's voice rang out from the back room. Okay, thank you, Mama, you called. You finally turned back to Kirishima, grinning ear to ear. Kirishima burst out the door, tagging you behind him. You guys got 2 steps down the street before you nearly tripped over a loose stone, stumbling toward Kirishima. Kirishima, I'm not wearing any shoes. He came to a stop, turning to face you. He hummed for a moment. Then I will be a man and treat the maiden properly. He grinned, only hesitating for a second. He bent down and scooped you into his arms, one arm supporting your back and the other under your legs. You let out a startled screech, wrapping your arms around his neck to keep yourself steady. Oh my goodness! Can you put me down? You whined. But you couldn't stop the smile that took your lips. Off we go! He cheered. He bolted down the street, waving in and out of the confused villager, you giggling in delight. The 2 of you had reached the forest now, which infiltrated on the town outskirts. You were staring in awe at the trees that towered above them, that leafy canopy hiding them from the sky above. The wind caused the tree to rustle, the present sunlight dancing with the shadows. The ferns that lined the floor tickled Kirishima's legs, but he ignored them. This place is so beautiful, you whispered. He hummed, but his eyes were trained on you. Eventually, you reached a small clearing nestled away in the forest. Kirishima gently set you down, the dewy lush grass tickling your feet. You strode out in the clearing breathless as you gazed around. There was a small river running through the clearing. The sound of running water was faint, yet engulfed the area with a sense of tranquility. There was a small cave on the perimeter, a small campfire set up in the middle of it, with what looked to the bags and bed set up beside it. As you headed to check the stream, Kirishima ducked toward the cave, kneeling down and riffling through his bag. His finger grazed a cool, small surface, to which he wrapped his hands around it, cradling it in his palm. He smiled to himself, looking down at the object. He heard a sharp yell and quickly turned around, seeing you on the ground, and an arrow struck right next to your feet. Kirishima bolted over, growling as he surveyed the forest. He slid over the grass on his knees, stopping by his side. He tore his gaze from the trees, inspecting every inch of your face. Are you okay? I'm so sorry. Please tell me you're not hurt. You meekly nodded, but shaky as he tried to speak. Yes, I'm fine. Just scared. Kirishima nodded. Quickly getting to his feet, pulling you up with him. He absentmindedly ushered you behind him, stepping forward to place himself between you and him. He glared at the forest. There came an aggressive yell before Bakugo stepped into the clearing bow. Bakugo stepped out into the clearing bow. There was an aggressive yell before Bakugo stepped out into the clearing, bow down, and paused, aimed at you. Bakugo, what are you doing? Kirishima hissed. Said Bottle only sharpened his glare. I want to know why the fuck she's here and who the fuck she thinks she is. He began to circle the 2 of you. You can trust her, Bakugo? Kirishima tried again. Like shit I can. I'm not fucking trusting some low-life village girl. Who's it just going to babble to her friend and get us killed? Bakugo snapped back. You stood giggling behind the protector. You wished you could be brave and strong, but being aimed at by a bow held by a crazy maniac wasn't exactly a common occurrence. It's okay, Kirishima. I live. I can promise on my life I won't tell. He has every right to be mad. You were cut off as Kirishima growled. He shot a glance at you over his shoulder, winking as he did so. Then, a second later, her vision was filled with red. Protectively curled around her was none other than a blazing red dragon. As you gazed upon the grand beast before you, the dragon was perched much like a cat, ready to pounce on its prey. You hesitantly reached out, trailing your finger over its scales. They were quite smooth and warm against your finger. At feeling your touch, Kirishima turned to gaze at you, watching as you delicately straightened his scales. He turned back, shooting a final glare at Bakugo, who stood mouth agape and bow pointed to the ground. Kirishima brought his hands down towards you, gently nudging your arms. You spun on your heel, letting out a small squeak and nearly tripping backward. Kirishima shuffled his body to catch you. Back now pressed against his rawhide, you reach out, pressing your hands against his jaw. You giggle as you felt his hot breath brush over your face. Kirishima nudged you again, letting out a little purr rumble through him. If shitty hair trusts you enough to show you this, then you must be at least a little trustworthy. Try anything and I'll fucking kill you. Bakugo stalked off toward the cave, grumbling to himself. The two of you turned back to each other. He's rather grumpy, isn't it? You mumbled. Kirishima let out what could only be recognized as a laugh, sprawling himself out on the grass. You watch him in peace, adoration, and excitement glittering in your eyes. I can't believe you're a dragon! You're absolutely beautiful! You could. Kirishima hummed, nudging your foot with his nose. You giggled, setting yourself on the ground beside him. You began gently scratching under his chin, much to Kirishima's delight. Fucking shitty hair making friends. Bakugo mumbled. He watched the two of you love with one another. Kirishima had hardly ever shown his dragon forms to him. He hated to admit it, but maybe you were more trustworthy than he thought. You couldn't keep the smile on your face as you stood at the counter the next day. The usual morning customer came in, your mother oddly eyeing you, as you continued to cast your gaze to the window every chance you got. Say, what's with the boy recently? You nearly tripped over your own feet, sputtering an apology as she placed the fresh bread down. You kept your gaze on the counter. Nothing. You offered a weak smile. Your eyes traveled along the countertop, eventually fading to the window. The woman in front of you laughed. Whatever you say, dearie. She smiled innocently, but there was a knowing glint in her old eyes. She placed a few gold pieces on the bench, taking the bread and shuffling out of the store. You waved another customer out, taking a moment to breathe as no one was ready to order. You slumped against the wall, gaze again, turning to the window. It was hard to miss the fiery red. You felt your heart flutter, your smile only growing as you got closer to the store. He jumped up to the stone step, boots pounding on the wooden flooring. You offered him a small wave, not able to seize your beating heart. He began walking towards you, duckling around the store patrons, nervous gaze flitting around the room before settling on you. He was a few steps away before a small child peeked his head over the counter, dropping a few small coins onto it. You sighed, throwing an apologetic look at Kirishima. You smiled down to the boy, cheerily asking his order. Kirishima made his way to the back of the room, taking to leaning on the wall as he waited patiently for his chance. He watched you as you served, smiling and chatting with your customer. Just being in the same room as you was enough to brighten his day. Finally, after nearly half an hour of shared glances, they were finally alone. The store free of customer. He smiled, teeth showing, as he headed for the counter. Finally! I've been hearing to hear the end of the story all day. You shrugged, leaning against the counter as Kirishima trotted over, averting his gaze and cheeks swarthy as he rubbed the back of his neck. Before that, I have something for you. He fiddled with something clutches in his fingers, before holding it out to you. Laying his palm was a ring. It was light, creamy color with an almost grainy texture. You hesitantly took it, turning it over in your fingers. There was an engraving, a dragon, its head wrapping around the ring to its tail. But what really drew your attention was the glittering ruby in the place of the dragon eyes. You sat in awe, finger delicately tracing the jewel. Wow, it's absolutely beautiful, you murmured. Kirishima nervously smiled, whipping his sweaty hands on his pants. Yeah, every dragonborn is gifted with a ring like that. It signifies our origin. It's made out of the bones of our ancestor and their spirits. It's said to protect the wearer. He finished. Your eyes widened, and you quickly stuck your hand out, offering back the ring. I could never take something that precious. Kirishima stuck his hands up, smirking at you. Too bad, I won't take it back. He chuckled. You huffed, eyes pleading with him. What? Kirishima, I couldn't possibly keep something so valuable. I haven't even done anything to deserve it. You whined. The red-headed sighed, approaching you and gently taking your outstretched hand into his. It felt as if your hands fit perfectly into his, the warmth radiating of them enticing him closer. He placed the ring in your palm and closed your finger around it. It's a gift from me to you. You gazed up in his eyes. They were filled with nothing but warmth. You nodded. Thank you, Kirishima. You swore that your heart was beating out of your chest. You just hoped he couldn't hear it. You uncurled your finger, gazing at the ring once more, before gingerly sliding it onto your finger. It was a perfect fit. Your eyes gleamed as you admired the ring, smiling gaily as you watched the gem glitter in the sunlight. The two of you found yourself in your usual places, seated on the floor behind the counter. You couldn't help your gaze skip back to the ring every so often. It felt so unreal to wear it. You didn't feel like it belonged to you. You unconsciously rubbed the thumb over the small gem, smiling to yourself as you did so. You noticed almost immediately, but Kirishima's eyes matched the color of the gem perfectly. Every time you caught his gaze, it smiled at you, sharp teeth showing. And every time, you will feel the surface of it flutter over your cheeks. Hey, Kirishima? You trailed off, eyes darting towards his side. He nodded his head, signaling you to continue. Could you show me your sword? You chimed. Kirishima looked a bit taken aback for a moment before he grinned widely and agreed. Sure! He patted the wooden flooring beside him. Come here, it'll be easier to show you. Kirishima knew it would be just as easy to show her in their current position. You quickly shuffled over, nearly bouncing in place. Kirishima laughed to himself, earning a playful glare from you. All right, be careful. He placed his hands onto the hilt of one of the swords, his grip tightening as if second nature. In one swift motion, he pulled it from its sheath. You brought it aside in awe, eyes trained onto the blade. It was a bright, reflective silver with marking and runes running down the blade. It was clear the sword had been taken care of well. It's so pretty, you mused. Kirishima used his free hand to rub the back of his neck, gazing off in thought. I don't think many people use the word pretty to describe a sword, you know. Well, I do. You stuck your tongue out at him. He laughed before gently taking your worth in his hand. Here, hold it. He offered the hilt of the sword to you. You let out a sputter, but nonetheless wrapped your finger around the hilt. You nearly dropped it, surprised by its weight. You gently placed it flat on the blade until your other hands examining it closer. This is the most exciting thing I've ever done. He paused, throwing a buzz glove at the redhead. Besides getting protected by a manly dragon, of course. You giggled as the boy's face flared pink. He quickly turned his face away, mumbling something you couldn't hear. The two of you eventually returned to your usual chatter, which was mostly Kirishima telling Green's story of his adventure. Neither paid any attention to the painted sky out of the window, not even when the inky black poured over it, drowning out the color and leaving a blank canvas for the stars to find a place. Kirishima was enthralled with his story, trying to recall every thrilling detail and exciting moment. His arms would brush against yours whenever he made a motion with his hands. He was used to seeing your reaction, but he much preferred being close to you. So when he felt a heavy weight drop onto his shoulder, he realized you had fallen asleep on him. He nearly freaked out. You always smelled like baked bread, and that scent always seemed to put him at ease. He watched your chest rise and fall in an even pattern. He glanced toward the door. He wished to stay for as long as he could, but he knew Bakugo would get mad at him. Thought perhaps it was worth it. You better not wake my daughter. She deserved to rest. Kirishima jumped a little, gaze jumping to the voice. Your mother stood in the doorway, smiling gently at him. Kirishima nodded his head. You better take good care of her. You better take good care of her. Kirishima glanced back at her again. He opened his mouth to respond, but she simply slipped away. His ruby eyes trailed over her, and he cautiously swung an arm around you, resting his head on top of yours. Just for now, he let himself have discomfort.
The sorrow, I caught up in all the sorrow.